You're listening to Popcorn Unscripted,
the podcast where we dive into movies and TV shows with no scripts, no filters, just real talk and plenty of popcorn.
I'm Bailey.
And I'm Dylan.
We're here to talk about everything we love
And love to hate
in pop culture. So grab your popcorn,
sit back,
and let's get this show started. This is one of those movies that just sneaks up on you. You go in expecting a lighthearted, coming-of-age story, and you leave with a lump in your throat and a notebook full of quotes. Welcome to episode 38. So, this is not my first time watching this movie, but genuinely, I think this movie is very underrated and not talked about enough. If you don't know, this movie came out in 2003. I was only 3 years old at the time when this movie came out, and this movie is certainly an all-time favorite for me growing up. This movie has so much heart and soul in it, and I can relate to it so much. It is just such a lovely story. Such a lovely story. It's worth a watch. And not only that, but the cast, guys, the cast for this movie is absolutely insane. You can't beat it. You genuinely can't beat it. You have Michael Caine, and then you also have Michael Caine, and you have Michael O'Neill, you have Robert Duvall, you have Josh Lucas who played the adult Walker, and it's just, this cast is so amazing. Mitchell Musso was in this movie, which is crazy. And you also had Adrian Pasdar, who played one of the salesmen who actually sold them the thing that you pull and it shoots out a puck and then you shoot the puck. And it's funny because I know him from Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. playing General Talbot. I was like, what the actual crap is this? But this cast is so underrated, especially since you have Robert Duvall and Michael Caine in this movie. It's just an amazing cast. And you also have Haley Joel Osment playing young Walter, and it's just an absolutely stunning cast. And you have Kira Sedgwick, who played Walter's mother, May. It's just an absolutely stellar cast. The story was absolutely amazing. What drew me to cover it is I was literally just looking through my DVDs because, of course, today of all days, my internet was out, so I couldn't do anything about it. And I just so happened to see Secondhand Lions on my shelf, and I was like, you know what? It's been a hot minute since I've seen this movie, so why not, you know? As I mentioned, this movie is very underrated. It is not talked about. As for its fan base, I'm not sure it's very loyal, but this movie is just so freaking good. It's just so freaking good, and I do think people need to revisit this movie because of the message that is behind it. But before we get into that kind of stuff, I want to give you guys a little bit of a walkthrough of the story. So, we start with Walter, who's this quiet, nervous kid getting dropped off with two gun-toting old men who clearly don't want him there, obviously. And it's a classic setup, but it doesn't stay predictable. This movie keeps you on your toes. It really, really does. And again, amazing movie. So, in the beginning of the story, you see May abandoning Walter and dumping him onto his two uncles that he doesn't even know, and also he didn't even know they existed. And that is where we come to find out that these two men had been gone for 40 years, not knowing where they were, what happened to them, or even knowing what their story is. We don't know a single thing about these men other than they are Walter's uncles somehow, some way, somehow. I don't even remember how May told him that they were related. I really don't remember it at all. So Hub and Garth are the two uncles. Hub being the big burly one with the mustache, and then of course Garth being the more, I would say, intelligent one of the two. I don't want to insult Hub's intelligence there, but I would say Garth is the more intelligent one. He's the one that kind of has a plan, and Hub's like, you know what? I'm not gonna stick with that plan. And he goes in guns blazing. Literally polar opposites of both, but they are absolutely amazing brothers. And so you meet both of them. They obviously don't want the kid there. They just want to keep to themselves. They just want to stay hermits for the rest of their lives. For the rest of their old lives, they want to stay hermits. And that's exactly what they want to do. And so with the kid thrown in the mix, it's kind of threw a hitch in their step, I guess you could say. And now they're stuck with this kid for the summer, and it's like they don't know what to do. They've never had a kid before. And so it's like it's a learning curve for them. It's not just a learning curve for them, but it's also a learning curve for Walter, because now he kind of has to adjust himself to this life on this farm, or whatever you want to call it, on this place, and he has to adjust to them, and they have to adjust to him and his needs, and he has to adjust to them and what they do, and things like that. And then, of course, I think Garth warms up to the kid a whole lot more quickly. Garth warms up to Walter easier than Hub does, but I think it's because of Hub's past that's why he doesn't really warm up to the kid as much, because Garth really warms up to the kid rather quickly, and I absolutely love the dynamic between Garth and Walter. It's an amazing uncle dynamic there, and the way Garth tells him these stories and things like that, and the way he kind of encourages the kid, I guess you could say, encourages Walter. He kind of like, you're a good kid. You're a good kid is really what it gets onto. Okay, and then of course we have the relatives come into town, and of course the relatives have this like intuition about Walter, thinking, oh, he's just gonna be here for the money because that's what May wants, and things like that. So they're like, oh, he's just gonna be here to find the money, right? He's just gonna be here to get their fortune, But of course they're there for the same thing. That's what everybody wants, is their fortune, because of what happened. And, which of course, everybody thinks they had robbed a bank, and there was one lady later on in the movie that's like, they robbed Al Capone. They took the money from Al Capone, and I'm just like, no. Just no. Like, that would be, genuinely, if you think about that time frame, I'm gonna go off the books here, but if you actually think about that time frame, I genuinely think it would be rather difficult to steal from Al Capone if you didn't know his inner circle. I think it would have been pretty difficult to steal from Al Capone even if you tried, but I digress. I think what had happened and how they have so much money is that they took the gold that they had gotten, as you hear like from later on in the stories, the gold that they had gotten. I think they went and sold all of the gold in America, and then that's how they got all of that cash that Walter ends up finding towards the end of the movie. But I digress. We're going to get on to the middle section of the movie. So then we learn about Hub's mysterious past, Garth's insane stories, and the lion and a crate that becomes one with the family. So, I like how the story starts you off with, like, the dynamic between the uncles and stuff. You have that dynamic started, and Walter sees Hub sleepwalk for the first time. And this is where the story really kicks off, because when Walter tries to go out and, and see what he's doing, like, of course, this first time he's sleepwalking, he's, like, fighting off people, and Walter's not exactly sure what he's doing, and he has this inkling, he wants to know why. He wants to know why he's doing these things, and so time goes on, Walter learns a little bit more, and some time passes, and the two uncles start to warm up to the kid a little bit more. It's a slow burn. It's a slow burn, but it's not. It's kind of weird how this movie is, like, so short, but it feels like you've seen, like, it feels like you're just transported. It's like you're just transported there, and you grow with these characters. You learn alongside Walter, and I love that about this movie, is that you learn as you follow along, and it keeps you on your toes. Unless you've seen the movie before, it keeps you on your toes. You never know what's going to happen next, and that's how spontaneous these two uncles are. It's just absolutely incredible. And the way they did these stories and stuff is just all really layered. It's all so layered so perfectly. It's like, what is that? It's like 100 layer potato, or that 100-layer potato dish where you have so many potatoes and you cut into it and there's hundreds of layers. That's what this movie is. That's what that movie looks like, and it's perfect. And then you have Garth telling Walter about all of these things that Hub used to do in Africa over the past 40 years, and he tells him about Jasmine, who is actually a very big important character in this, because it's a part of Hub's past, and the story becomes an important part for Walter, because everything that he's ever been told has been a lie and not even true. And he had always never been sure what to believe in, and that's the whole point of this story, is that these uncles give him something to believe in, and they give him something that his mother couldn't give him. And that's really the whole point of this story, is that he's able to get something from these uncles that his mother couldn't even give. And it's kind of sad in a way, because, you would want him to be with his mother and be happy, that kind of goes for anything. But at the end of the day, if his mother's going to keep abandoning him and marrying douchebags, is it really worth it? And I think that's one of the things that was going through Walter's head there at the end. It's like he wasn't happy with his mother. And that's why he asked there on the bridge, just do something for me. Do something that's good for me, Just do something that, would make me happy, instead of you happy. Think of me for once, But I'm getting kind of ahead of myself. And so, as the story goes on, he tells Walter the first part of that story, and then it's after that, they end up getting the lion, which a lion is also a crucial part of this, because it becomes Walter's pet. It becomes Walter's first pet, and it's an adorable. I love the lion. I think the lion is one of the best parts of the movie, which I think is why it's called Secondhand Lions. And so it's an amazing story. How the lion works. It's an old lion. Had never seen the jungle. It's his old zoo lion that they had ordered from some sort of salesman, because Walter had eventually told them, it was what's good about having all of this money if you're never going to spend it? And of course that got the uncles to going on a spending spree with these car salesmen that keeps coming up, and so they end up getting this lion, and this lion is just old and weak, and it won't really move. And that's when Walter starts feeding it, and it starts to get better. It starts to get stronger. Even though it is locked up in a crate, it's still getting better. And so at some point, these relatives end up coming back. Well, actually, before that, they had went to get lion feed, and Hub, I think, ends up having a heart attack. Is what I think ends up happening. He ends up passing out after lifting all of that stuff, all of that heavy stuff, and because the lion feed was 50 pounds a bag. And he was lifting all of that and throwing it into the truck. And so that overexerted his heart, and therefore he ended up having a heart attack. And therefore Garth and Walter ended up having to take him to the hospital. And that's where we hear the next part of Hub's story. And we hear about how he ends up with Jasmine, and he ends up marrying her, and things of that nature. He ends up telling Walter about all of that kind of stuff, and how Jasmine came into the picture. It's about how Jasmine came into the picture. And so, and if you don't, and I also kind of didn't say this part, but Walter also ends up naming the lion Jasmine. And in that scene, yeah, I'm kind of backtracking a little bit, but in that scene, this is where this part where Garth tells him more about Jasmine and who she is to Hub and how they came to fall in love and things like that. Or at least I'm pretty sure that's after the... No, I don't think it is. I don't think that's after that. I'm getting my story mixed up, but at some point in the story, he ends up telling him that they end up falling in love and, and everything. And so, it's in the hospital where Garth tells him, like, they live happily ever after the end, and things like that. And so, by the time Walter confronts his mom and chooses to believe in the stories, we've already made that choice ourselves. Getting to the end of the story, so I'm kind of getting a little bit more of ahead of myself, but, where was I? I've done lost my train of thought. So after all of this happens, we're getting close to the end of the story, and at some point Walter ends up finding where the cache is in the barn. Because he ends up following Uncle Garth out there, and miraculously, like a few nights later, I'm assuming, his mother comes to the house with her quote-unquote boyfriend that she met in Vegas. And he's supposedly a detective. And they come up with this story that his uncles were, like, two notoriously, big schemers from, like, they had stolen money from a bank, they had robbed a bank or whatever. And Walter was telling him, well, what about Jasmine? Oh, well, Garth left her for dead, shot her and left her for dead. All of this kind of BS crap. And even us as the viewer had made that choice, like, I don't believe that they robbed the bank. The picture that Walter had found at the beginning of the movie is, like, the perfect evidence to say that the stories that Garth was telling Walter is absolutely true. And we already knew that as the viewer. Like, the stories they were telling us is true. Like, all of this stuff that they were saying that they robbed a bank and stuff is... Of course it's not true. Because there's proof right there that it's true. And, of course, that's when Walter's like, I don't believe a single word these people are saying. They're just feeding me BS. And so he's just like, I don't believe you. I believe them. I'm taking their side. And we, as the viewer, do too. We, as the viewer, pick their side because, that's who they are, and those stories are true. I genuinely believe that those stories are true, and people saying that they had stole all this money from, like, Al Capone, or they had just robbed a bank or whatever, I genuinely think that's BS. I genuinely think that they brought the gold back to the U.S. and they sold all of the gold, and that's how they got the cash money, by selling all of that gold. And of course, back then, I'm not sure how much gold was back then, but, which of course they could have kept the gold for a while and just sold it whenever it was on like a very high peak. I'm not really sure how they really got the cash, but I assume that's what they did, is they sold the gold and got the cash, and that's why they had so much cash, sitting on so much cash. But, and then we get to see Walter stepping up and standing up for himself. This is the point where Walter is just like, I want to be like them. You know, I think he had it in his mind, like, I want to be like Uncle Hub. I'm not going to stand here and I'm not going to take this BS that this man is giving me. I'm not going to let this man stomp all over me. I'm not going to let him stomp over this story. I'm not going to let him do this to me. And I love Walter for that. And he's an absolutely amazing character, and his character development is absolutely amazing in this story. I genuinely couldn't even say much, but yeah, Walter stands up for himself, ends up kicking the guy in the balls, runs off, and then of course this is where the whole arc with the lion comes through, and she ends up attacking the guy, saving Walter, and ultimately ends up sacrificing her own life to save Walter, because her heart gives out from protecting her cub. And I love the lion so much. The lion is just such a crucial part to the story, and it's so good. I just cannot praise this movie enough. If you have not seen this movie, please go watch it. It is so amazing. I genuinely think people should watch it in this day and age, because this movie, I think, is something that the world needs to come back to and needs to rewatch and listen. It's just such a great movie. It's such a great timepiece, and it's aged so well. I love it so much. I will never not praise this movie. This movie is absolutely incredible. And then of course you have Hub's speech that he gives to Walter at the end of the movie. About what every boy needs to believe in. Because throughout the whole movie, they keep telling him all of these things, and he's just hoping in the back of his mind that this is true. So some of the elements from the speech, which I think this kind of goes over the whole speech, but one of the main points is the value of belief. Hub asserts that the things that a man chooses to believe in shapes who he becomes. It shapes who he becomes. And then, of course, you have the principles over falsehoods. He encourages believing in things like inherent goodness, honor, courage, and virtue. And then he also brushes over the superiority of love. Hub stresses that true love is a fundamental, eternal force that deserves belief, and true love lasts forever. And then it also brushes over meaning and non-factual things. The speech suggests that believing in these positive ideals, even if not demonstrably true, provides purpose and makes a person better. So, what the speech means: it's a call to cultivate virtues that give life meaning, even in a cynical world, which I think is interesting given today's circumstances and given the way the world is today. It's like, you can't make this stuff up, guys. You just can't. And it suggests that building your character around these ideals creates a strong personal code and helps one live a more fulfilling life. And it also shows how belief can serve a foundation for growth and help one become a better person, rather than just getting by on a familiar, unexamined beliefs. And the speech is such such a crucial thing. And it's absolutely amazing. I'm gonna see if I can pull up the whole speech. Right here. Right here's the whole speech. Okay. So this is what Hub says. This is his whole speech. I think this is what he says to Walter. I don't think this is the whole speech because we actually don't hear the whole speech in the movie because he's saying it to these 4 boys that he ended up fighting in that, it's not really a bar, but in this barbecue place that they were at. I guess that you could call it like it's not a bar because you could buy beer, but it's some kind of place where they were sitting down and eating barbecue and these 4 guys had come in. This is actually one of the most important parts of this movie is Hub fighting these 4 guys and Walter being able to see that this is also another credible thing that makes the stories that he's hearing true, just by seeing how Hub is with fighting these guys. So this is his speech. Okay. He says, sometimes things that may or may not be true are the things a man needs to believe in the most. That people are basically good, that honor, courage, and virtue mean everything. That power and money and power mean nothing. That good always triumphs over evil. And I want you to remember this, that love, true love never dies. You remember that, boy. You remember that. Doesn't matter if it's true or not. You see, a man should believe in those things because those things are worth believing in. And honestly, in this world, just hearing that speech is encouraging to me. And I hope it's encouraging to you guys who are listening to this. Because that's one of the most important things about this movie is just that little speech right there. And I can't stress that enough. And then of course you have the ending where the 2 uncles end up dying in a plane crash while trying to spin it upside down through the barn, which of course as a viewer you kind of had to imagine that they were going to die doing something crazy, and they absolutely did. And I think in the back of Walter's mind, he knew that's how they were going to go too. They died when they were both 90 years old. So, good. They lived a good long life, for sure. And I honestly think that, I don't think Walter would have wanted them to go out any other way than with a bang. And it's such an emotional thing because the Sheik's son and his grandson had landed on the property just to see where these are, and the kid ends up asking, so the guys in great-grandfather's stories, they really lived? And then Walter looks at them both and he says, yeah, they really lived, and they truly did. They truly did. And that just means, and it confirms that all the stories that we had heard throughout the entire movie were absolutely true, and we were right to believe in these uncles, and Walter was right to believe in these uncles, and to not give in to all of the things that he had heard, and all of that kind of stuff. So, Secondhand Lions is about growing up, but it's also about choosing your truth, and the power of stories to shape who we become. So belief versus truth doesn't matter if the stories were real. No. I genuinely don't think it matters if the stories were real or not. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what other people say. It only matters what you believe in. You know? It only matters what you believe and what you see. It only matters. It only matters at that. Truth hurts. Let's say that. Like, you can choose to believe in what you hear, or you can hear the truth and not like it, you know? I guess. I'm not really sure what I'm trying to say, but I genuinely genuinely believe that it didn't matter if the stories were real or not, because even if the stories weren't true, I think I still would have sided with the uncles. Because just because of the way they are and the dynamic that they have and the relationship that they had with Walter, I genuinely think it wouldn't have mattered if they were true or not to Walter. I think he would have sided with the uncles either way. And I don't think he would have cared. And me as a viewer, I don't think I would have cared either. So generational mentorship. What Walter learns. What he learns from Hub and Garth. It's something that I think everybody can learn from, not just men, but also women too. Don't believe everything you hear, but believe in what you want to. You know, I guess is kind of one of the things I'm hearing, or that I'm seeing. And yeah, that's, don't believe everything you hear, because not everything you hear is true. But there is truth out there. Like, don't give up on the truth, but be careful who you trust and who you believe, I guess, is one of those things. And then, of course, this movie taps into masculinity and emotions. And so this movie does a very great job in balancing toughness and vulnerability. Because we see that in Hub a lot. We see that he's this tough guy, but he's also very vulnerable, especially with Jasmine's story. Because the way Jasmine ends up leaving this world is she dies during childbirth, and the child also dies, which leaves like a deep, dark hole in Hub's heart. So this movie is definitely good to touch on men's masculinity and emotional things. Like, guys, specifically men, it is okay to be emotional. It is okay to feel vulnerable. It is part of being human. It is okay to have empathy. It is okay to feel things. It is perfectly okay. You don't have to be this big tough guy all the time. You genuinely don't. You don't have to be that. It is okay to feel emotions. It is okay to share emotions. It is okay to be vulnerable. And don't think that because you are crying makes you like a sissy or whatever. Like, throw that out the window, okay? It's okay to cry. Even I had to learn that. Even I had to learn that it's okay to cry. It's okay to let out your emotions. It is okay to be vulnerable. And you see that in Hub, because you can see that he's holding all of this back. He doesn't want to feel this, but he does. And he puts on this tough guy act, and it ends up just biting him in the butt. And I think Hub realizes there in the end that I don't need to be bottling this up anymore. I need to let this go. I need to be able to feel these things. I need to be able to let this go. I need to be able to let this out. I need to be able to express this. And he does. And it also shows with Walter as well. It shows that he wasn't raised to be very masculine. He didn't have a father figure to teach him these things, these fundamentals. All he had was his mother. So that's why I think Garth ends up saying, oh, we're gonna have a little sissy boy running around here, something like that. And as the story goes through, you can see Walter growing and evolving and becoming a man and becoming who he's meant to be. And then, of course, later you see at the end of the movie, he's an artist, a comic artist, or like a story writer, just like Garth was. Because I remember Garth saying that he worked with like Hollywood writers and things like that, and then that's what Walter ended up going into as well, which I think was actually really, really cool. at the end of it all, and he ended up trying to tell his story through art and illustrations, and which of course we kind of, as a viewer, you kind of know that's one of the things he's wanting to go into, because he's always been interested in stories, even in the beginning, because May even's like, oh, well, maybe you can find all that buried treasure like you read in all those books, and all that kind of stuff. So you kind of know that he has a mind for that kind of thing. And this movie also touches on the idea of earned legacy. And this movie, it's definitely very, very, it's, in this movie, Garth and Hub definitely earned the legacy that they had. Even though they were very, like, what's the word? Not, misconceived, I guess is the word. You guys know what word I'm trying to say, but, misinterpreted, I guess you could say. Because nobody knew about these stories from Africa. Nobody knew about these stories. Everybody thinks that they just robbed banks, or stole from Al Capone, or just stole the money somehow, some way. And never thought to question, never thought to ask them how they got this money. Which, of course, I don't think they would have just told anybody. I genuinely don't think they would have just told anybody that where the money come from. Because, of the way they are. So there's so many moments that stick with me. I've brushed over a few throughout this entire episode. But a few hit me just right in the feelings. One being Hub's "What Every Boy Needs to Know" speech. That's a big thing for me, because even though I'm a woman, I still am in touch with that. It's still, like, it's not talking to just man or woman, it's talking to us both. Like, it is okay to feel. It is okay to be emotional. Like, it's human. You're human. It's fine. It's normal. It's like I've heard before, and I like this saying, empathy is our superpower. I think of empathy as a superpower, and it very much is, especially in the line of work that I'm in now. Empathy is a very, very big superpower in a lot of ways, and you never know who you can touch with empathy. You never know whose day you can make with empathy, and empathy can go such a long way. And then you also have the line defending Walter, and she ends up dying because of it, because of all the excitement her heart ends up giving out. And it's just an emotional thing, is that she died happy. She died doing what she wanted to do. She died doing what she loved. She died protecting her cub. She died protecting the person that took care of her in her old age. And if you think about it, that's kind of what Walter did with the two uncles, is he took care of them as much as they took care of him. And it is very, very emotional. And then you have the final shot of the crashed biplane, which I don't think is very emotional. It's just like, yep, if we wanted the two uncles to die, that's how we'd want them to go. Something dangerous and kooky and crazy, that makes sense. It just makes sense for them to die that way. And, it's kind of like, and even Walter looked like he wasn't even really sad about it. He's just like, yep, that's how they went. And so it's like, I just think that's kind of funny in a way. And then of course you have Garth telling the last story about Hub before Walter had to go ask Hub himself what happened to Jasmine. And that's a kind of an emotional thing too, because Walter wants to know what happened to Jasmine. Throughout the entire thing, he wants to know about Jasmine. Because he ended up finding that picture at the beginning of the movie. And so he keeps asking about her, and Garth's like, nope, if you want to know what happened to Jasmine, you're gonna have to ask him. You know? Which, genuinely, that makes me think, did Garth know what happened to Jasmine? Did he know what happened to her? Did he know about that part of Garth's, or Hub's, point in his life? But, I don't know. But talking about the performances in general, the cast is stacked and somehow still underrated. Again, this cast is so underrated. This cast is so good. And every actor just gets it. Like, you have Robert Duvall, Michael Caine, Haley Joel Osment, and Kira Sedgwick. It's just a stacked cast. And then this movie is so underrated and so under talked about. This movie needs to be talked about more. I genuinely think it needs to be talked about more because this movie is such an important piece of film history, in my opinion. It's just such a good movie. Like, you can't not watch this and not fall in love with it. It's just so beautiful. You have Robert Duvall, who played Hub. He's as tough as nails, with a quiet sadness, and he nails the performance. He just nails it. It's perfect. Like, he's just the perfect guy to play Hub. And then, of course, you have Michael Caine as Garth, who is the perfect storyteller. And I think he may have done some voiceover work as a storyteller, like, as a narrator. I'm not exactly 100% sure on that, but I'm sure he has, because he has the voice for that. And if I were to get a narrator, I would get Michael Caine for sure. I don't know why I said McCain. That's weird. Okay, anyway. And then, of course, you have Haley Joel Osment, who's believable, vulnerable, and quietly strong. He does a perfect Walter. He played Walter beautifully. And honestly, I don't think you could have casted a better Walter than Haley. I think he did an absolutely amazing job. And this will always probably be my most favorite performance of his, even though this is technically the only performance of his that I've ever seen. But if I were to have seen him in anything else, this movie would probably take the cake for sure. And then you have Kira Sedgwick as May, who is frustrating but nuanced, certainly, and she just plays the perfect mother for Walter. Like, you can feel that she wants to do what's best for both him and her, but she really only had her on her mind than she did her and Walter at the same time. So it's a bit of both. Like, she wants to do what's best for him, but she also wants to have, like, the best life for herself as well. And she does a perfect job at portraying that, for sure. And absolutely, if anything, it hits harder now as an adult, especially now in the world that we're in. This movie definitely hits different, but it still has that factor that I love so much. It's just I think this movie will forever be timeless. I genuinely think this movie will be timeless because you can always learn something from this movie. I genuinely believe that. And it's just absolutely amazing. I grew up watching this movie, as I mentioned in the beginning. I grew up watching this movie. This movie is an all-time favorite of mine. I have many all-time favorites, but this one always hits home for me because I love this story so much. And it's gentle. It has a gentle tone. Its themes, it's a movie unlike any other. And the fact that it came out in 2003 is interesting in its own right. And I would highly recommend you watch it if you have not seen this movie before. It's absolutely heartwarming. It's amazing. You will just fall in love with it, I think, just as much as I did as a kid, and just as much as I do now. I absolutely adore this movie, and I will forever adore this movie. I think we all want to believe in a life that meant something, and this movie makes you believe in the power of your own story, even if it sounds unbelievable. So, one question I want to ask you guys, do you think the stories were real, or does it even matter if the stories were real? And who was your favorite character? Hub, Garth, Walter? Who was your favorite? And, yeah. Let me know. Because, again, this movie is all-time favorite. Again, and to be fair, I think the lion's probably my favorite character, even though it's a lion. But it's an important part of the movie, and the lion always will have a special place in my heart. That's all for today's episode of Popcorn Unscripted.
Thanks so much for tuning in.
If you enjoyed the conversation, be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at PopUnscripted, then Popcorn Cinema on Facebook.
And let us know your thoughts or any suggestions for future episodes. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future episodes. We upload every Wednesday and Saturday.
If you'd like to send us a message or subscribe for bonus content, check out the links in the description.
Your support means a lot and helps keep the conversation going.
If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to leave us a review. It helps us out a ton, and we love hearing your thoughts.
Until next time, keep your popcorn close
and your movie critiques closer.
Thanks for listening to Popcorn Unscripted.